Welcome, occultists, to another video. Make sure to hit the like button and share for more scary content. The old Victorian house loomed ominously, its silence heavy and stifling under the weight of forgotten summers. Thin shafts of pale sunlight filtered through the dusty windows, casting elongated, ghostly rectangles on the worn wooden floor. Dust motes floated languidly in the golden beams, the only movement in the oppressive stillness. The house whispered of forgotten memories, of lives lived and lost within its shadowed halls. Mary and I had discovered it by chance, a forgotten relic on the outskirts of a sleepy town. Charmed by its faded grandeur and the promise of a fresh start, we poured our hearts and savings into restoring it. Despite the freshly painted walls and gleaming hardwood floors, a pervasive sense of unease lingered, settling deep in our bones. The silence was profound, broken only by the creaking floorboards and the rustling leaves against the window panes. An unseen presence seemed to watch our every move. Mary felt it most acutely, a constant prickling sensation on the back of her neck, a sudden chill in a sunlit room. She dismissed it as nerves, the stress of the move, the strangeness of a new environment. But deep down, a seed of fear had been planted, taking root in the fertile ground of her anxiety. I, ever the pragmatist, scoffed at her worries. It was an old house, that's all. Old houses creaked and groaned, echoes of the past. I refused to entertain the notion of anything more sinister, my skepticism a shield against the growing darkness that seemed to seep from the very walls. Nights were the worst. When the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised purple, the house came alive. Whispers snaked through the empty halls, like dry leaves skittering across the floor. Shadows stretched and contorted, taking on menacing shapes in the flickering candlelight. Sleep offered little respite. Mary would lie awake, listening to the symphony of unsettling noises. The creaking floorboards seemed to keep time with the frantic beating of her heart. The wind howled like a banshee outside our window, its mournful cries weaving into her dreams, transforming them into vivid nightmares. One night, she woke with a start, cold sweat clinging to her skin. A name whispered on the edge of hearing lingered in the air. "Mary," the voice seemed to say, a sibilant whisper that sent chills down her spine. She sat up in bed, clutching the sheets to her chest, her eyes wide with terror. The room was dark, the only light coming from the sliver of moon that peeked through the curtains. I slept soundly beside her, oblivious to her fear. She wanted to wake me, to seek comfort in my arms, but something held her back. The voice, though faint and fleeting, had held a note of warning, a sense of intimacy that bordered on the possessive. It was as if she were being watched, studied by something ancient and malevolent that she couldn't begin to comprehend. Our daughter, Lily, was the first to give voice to our fears. A quiet child with eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom, Lily had always possessed a sensitivity to the unseen. She spoke of imaginary friends, of shadows that danced in the corners of her room, of voices that whispered her name when no one else was near. At first, we dismissed it as childhood fantasies, the product of an overactive imagination. But as the days turned into weeks, Lily's fear grew. Her once vibrant laughter was replaced by a haunted silence. She refused to sleep in her room, claiming that something cold and unseen watched her from the closet. Her drawings, once filled with bright colors and whimsical creatures, became dark and disturbing, populated by shadowy figures with glowing red eyes. One evening, as Mary was tucking Lily into bed, our daughter clutched at her arm, her small face pale and drawn. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The shadow man is angry. He says we're not supposed to be here." Mary's blood ran cold. She had tried so hard to convince herself that Lily's fears were unfounded, but the sheer terror in our daughter's voice shattered her carefully constructed facade of normalcy. Something was terribly wrong in the house. The unseen presence that had once been a fleeting whisper had now taken on a more sinister form, its malevolence seeping into our lives like a poisonous gas. Fear, once a flickering candle in the darkness, now blazed within her, threatening to consume her sanity. Though outwardly skeptical, I couldn't ignore the growing dread that permeated our lives. Lily's terror was impossible to deny, and even I had begun to experience strange occurrences. Objects moved inexplicably, doors creaked open on their own, and a cold draft seemed to follow me from room to room, even on the stillest of days. One afternoon, while working in my study, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye, a fleeting shadow, dark and shapeless, flickering across the wall as if something large had just passed by the doorway. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest, but the hallway was empty. Had I imagined it? A trick of the light, perhaps? That night, as I lay in bed, pretending to sleep while Mary's steady breathing calmed my nerves, I felt it again. A coldness settled over the room, a distinct drop in temperature that sent a shiver down my spine. I opened my eyes a fraction, just enough to see a shadowy figure standing at the foot of the bed. It was tall and gaunt, its form indistinct in the darkness, but I could sense the malevolence that radiated from it. Cold, hungry terror froze me in place. I wanted to scream, to warn Mary, but no sound escaped my lips. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the apparition to disappear. But when I dared to look again, it was still there, watching us with an unnerving intensity. It was then that I knew with chilling certainty that we were not alone in the house. Something evil had taken up residence within its walls, something that fed on our fear, and it had no intention of leaving.